So for this video, we're going to be talking about the topics covered in week 3 of this class. Now, last week we talked about the while loop, and this week we're going to talk about the for loop. The for loop is similar to the while loop, but has some differences. The primary difference is that with a for loop, you know when you begin the loop how many times you're going to iterate through the loop. That's a little bit different than a while loop, because in a while loop, you can use logic and other types of things to determine how many times you loop through without knowing it before you start the loop. So the program that we're going to do today is kind of a continuation of the program that we did for week 2. We're going to be substituting the while loop we did with a for loop, and then we're also going to be adding some logic in conditional statements that will help you to also see those. So let me write out our requirements kind of to get things started. First of all, we want to ask the user how many numbers they want to add. Then, using a for loop, collect the numbers from the user, keeping a running total, and then display this total. So that's not a lot different than what we did last week. I'm going to add to that then, when the total is less than 100, show one message. When the total is greater than or equal to 100, show a different message. Okay, so this last bit about the total is something that we added new that will help you to learn how to use a conditional statement a little bit. So the next thing I really like to do is to look at the steps, okay? So the first thing we want to do, by the way, I guess I'll change this so that it actually is right. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is ask the user how many numbers. And store the number. Okay. 2, we're going to loop through the number of times specified. 3, ask the user, can't type today for some reason, for a number to add. 4, keep a running total. 5, we're going to end the loop. 6, we're going to show the total. 7, we're going to let's just say if the total is less than 100. 8, we're going to show one message, and then else show another message, and 11 will be ending the if. Okay, so hopefully you understand kind of what the steps are. I highly recommend that when you do your own assignments, you go through these 2 exercises, restating the requirements in your own words with your own mind, and then number 2, breaking it out into what we call in the class really an algorithm, which is a set of steps. That will help you to get your head around the program before you start writing any pseudocode. Okay, so let's jump down here now and let's look through the pseudocode. Now, the first thing we want to think about are what kind of variables are we looking at here? I've been using the algorithm of a mailbox or post office boxes as variables. These are the places that we store the information that we need to retrieve later. So for sure, we're going to need a variable that captures how many numbers we want to add. We'll call it how many numbers. We're going to need a total. Okay. And we're going to set the total equal to 0. Okay. Now, let's start with the first step here. Display. How many numbers do you want to add? And then we're going to use input to get, how many numbers. So we'll collect that from the keyboard. All right, not so bad. So now we're going to do a for loop. There's still a question or two about whether you have to declare the variable that's used in the counting of the for loop. We're going to do it just for the heck of it here. Declare, can't type, integer count. For count, we want to go 1, 2, how many numbers. So if a person types in 5 there, then our for loop is going to count from 1 to 5. Okay. Now, the nice thing about a for loop compared to a while loop is it will keep track of the value of count. It will increment it, and we don't have to really worry about it. I'm going to put my N4 here. So we just have to do the regular stuff we want to think about. We're going to have to collect a number, so let's declare a number here. Number to add. Remember that variable names don't have spaces in them, right? So one way to make it easier to see is to capitalize the first letter of each word that's within your the name of your variable. Okay, we want to display, enter a number to add, and we've got our input here, which is on number to add. Okay, and then included in our steps, we have this keep a running total. Okay, so what we're going to do with that is we're going to set total equal to, so remember it starts at 0, total plus number 2. So what's going to happen is that each time it goes through an iteration of the loop, it's going to take the value that it has for total and add number to add to it, the number that you've typed into the keyboard. So it creates a running total, okay? And then when we're done here, we're going to display the total of the numbers is, and we'll put total here. So that's the way in pseudocode you do that. Now, that gets us all the way down through line 6 of our algorithm. So in 7, we want to put in this if statement, okay? So we're going to say if total is less than 100, then it's going to do something. Else, it's going to do something else, okay? So you could do this either way. You could say if total is greater than or equal to 100, then do this thing, else do this thing. In this way, the less than 100 is going to be in the first block, and the greater than or equal to will be in the second block. So we're going to display your number is pretty low. Just an arbitrary message. Otherwise, your number is pretty high. Okay. in either case, we're displaying a couple of different messages. Okay, so this is our pseudocode. So let's think about what our output is going to be. So as when we look at a program, whether it's pseudocode or any other language, the program is going to be executed sequentially from top to bottom. Now, when we start to look at modules or functions or those kind of things, it might go away and do something and come back, but it's still sequential, okay? And so the first thing that we're going to do is, after it's declared these variables and set total to 0, we've got a display here. So the first thing we're going to see as output is, how many numbers do you want to add? Okay. So let's say as a user, we say 5, okay, and we hit enter. Okay, then it's going to drop down here, declare count, and it's going to start through this for loop. And like we said earlier, it's going to go from 1 to 5. Okay, and so within this, the first iteration in here, we're declaring a number to add. So the first thing after we type in 5 we're going to see is enter a number, can't type, to add. Let's say we put 1 here. Okay, that's what our input's going to be. Then it's going to create a subtotal. It's going to add 0 plus 1. It's going to be 1. And then the next time we come around to the top of the loop again, it's going to declare and it's going to display, and it'll say enter a number to add. Let's say we put 2 there. The set total is going to calculate that. So now we've got 3. Enter a number to add. Let's say we put 3 in here, hit enter. The set total is going to calculate that, and it'll be 6. We'll put 4 here. So 6 plus 4 is 10. So when we hit enter, the set total will be 10. And this time we'll type 5 and we'll hit enter. And the set total equals will end up being 15, which is really the final total. Because we're now at 5, the for loop will drop through. And the next thing that we'll see in our output is the total of the numbers is 15. Okay. That will take care of this display. Then it's going to start going through our if statement. Well, it's 15. So if total is less than 100, which in this case it is, then it's going to display, it'll execute the statements that are between the beginning of the if and this else clause. If it was greater than or equal to 100, it would execute between the if, the else, and the end if. So in our case, it's going to display your number is pretty low. So I hope, so that's really that constitutes our program here. I hope that this will help you to understand how a for loop works and how a conditional statement works. In this particular case, it's a 2-part conditional statement with an else in the middle. And I hope that this then will also help you as you tackle your assignment. And you're going to find that there are a lot of similarities between the example that I just went through here and your assignment.